ergonomy professor with a PhD in chemical sciences, who should know better, named Pablo Campra in Spain, stated that he analyzed something and found a comparison that was useful between a liquid that he was sent anonymously from an unknown origin, but he swears up and down it was a completely sealed vial, not tainted or altered in any way, not opened, resealed, and filled with something else, and that this vial contained material that he says had to be 99% graphene oxide. He compared it under a microscope with pictures on the internet from scientific journals. He didn't get graphene oxide, put it in the same lighting conditions with a naked eye light microscope. He used pictures off the internet. And this is my natural skin color. He did not use spectroscopy of any kind, Raman or other types. He is not the one who did this. He did not make this claim. Saying he did make this claim may actually be a disservice to this person. I mean, he's a professor at a college someplace, and that's it. Any college professor can do this experiment if you want to. What is the spectrum analyzer? Okay, there's many ways you can analyze molecular structures and things. Bouncing light of an individual frequency or group of them at a material can help you figure out, in most cases, what the chemical composition is. And you can guess if you have a degree, let's say, in molecular biology or organic chemistry versus inorganic chemistry. He has a chemical science degree. He has a PhD in chemical sciences. That isn't specifically about biological sciences, but okay. But this form of spectroscopy provides a molecule structural fingerprint in chemistry only, using visible light, near infrared, near ultraviolet, or X-ray using lasers, is the one that's called Raman. Separating the weak, inelastically scattered light, which we're trying to use for this purpose, from the distracting, intense ray light scattering from the laser itself was the main difficulty in the past. Near infrared is done using Fourier transform spectrometers. I actually have a little bit of experience with this. By the way, pro tip, I don't like fast Fourier transforms or anything like that when I do them mathematically. Just saying. That has nothing to do with this, but just pointing that out. This isn't the same as taking a light microscope, putting it under a light source, and looking at liquid you got from an anonymous source you can't trace the chain of evidence for. And one vial of this, and then saying billions of vials contain exactly the same thing, when published ingredient lists for what was in the vial were tested by outside parties and found to match the ingredient list and have nothing deviating from that. Let me repeat that. No one trusts anybody sending a vial of anything for medical purposes these days, you idiots. So of course people tested it. And it's not spot testing. They went out of their way to test the vials. In some places, I'm not stating where, but they're a little bit more paranoid because they don't really assume everybody's being goody-goody with them. Every vial was used to provide slightly more doses than it should because you were able to get away with it. Some of you found out that they included an extra dose or two worth by accident. But they took advantage of that to test as many bottles as they could because they were afraid of contamination. Because the stuff has a shelf life. You have to keep it in a deep freezer. You don't think someone's going to check this shit? And it was found they didn't contain this mysterious material. And again, the doctor, Pablo Campra, did not say he used some spectrometer at that point. He just looked at it under a microscope and it looked similar. Any of you who have ever worked with a microscope, you already know that this is bullshit right there from comparing it by not having a sample but using a photo. You can go out and find a bug in your yard that absolutely dead-ass is the same bug you see on a website identifying bugs, and it won't. Things in nature don't always match up with what you see on a camera. 99% or 90% or 99.99% graphene oxide was supposed to be found in these. That means there's literally nothing in them but graphene oxide. Okay, what's dangerous about graphene oxide? No, I don't mean the conspiracy theory involving reptilians. It's a yellow solid with carbon to oxygen ratio between 2 to 1 or 2 to 0.9, or 2 to 9, excuse me. Highly oxidized carbon. It's just carbon and oxygen with some hydrogen. The main purpose of it is to get metals out of it for usage in making a nearly pure carbon. After being strongly oxidized, it can also be acid stripped to do the same thing. Most of them are just oxidized with oxygen. This retains the layer structure of graphite with a much larger and irregular spacing, and can be acting as a seed material to be graphene, but it's not really graphene oxide, but people call it that because it's just a couple of steps away from being graphene. It was used for water purification and desalination in 1960s in experiments. That's how terribly toxic it is. But it's toxic, and it's used to make nanobots because, I'm sorry, someone said micro something spectrography. I'm going to put in nano. And I'm going to put the word quantum in here to attract the people who hate me most. You people who pass those words around. So anyway, how did they test it to find out there was toxicity? You take a 20-gram mouse, chronically expose it at 0.4, about half a milligram, for months and months at a time. It may be toxic. This is like taking a 200-pound person and feeding him for several months a bunch of charcoal and having them, I don't know, crap their pants. Let's talk about the other person who brings this up, a person named Jane Ruby, who has a doctorate in psychology, not medicine, manipulative, along with Pablo Campra, maybe saying this, depending on which viral post you looked at. 99% UV absorption signal is compatible with many other components that show the same signal as graphene, because it's a hydrocarbon. Graphene compounds, no matter what they are, will show an absorption spectrum, or an emission spectrum, or this kind of spectrum, that matches, your skin might match. Activated charcoal might match. A sheet of paper might match. Even though it matched other things besides graphene, like, medication, and more importantly, again, the originator of this that's attributed to this PhD chemical science professor and ergonomy professor, Pablo Campra, he said he just looked at it under a microscope. He didn't say any of these things. I don't want to crap on the guy here. He may have not said any of this. He's in a video saying one thing or another. I'm not willing to throw him under a bus over this. I think he's made a simple mistake. When you find a result that looks weird, you double check it. But anyway, they said it has to be. It has to be derived not from other biological things like RNA, or more accurately, anything else that might be in a vial of some sort. No. And it can't be from contamination because it was sent anonymously and totally couldn't be, adulterated. No, it has to be 99% graphene in some form. Did you know that you can get a suspended liquid with graphene in it that is just a vial that you use for other things? It's a similar vial. It's used to put graphene into an experimental petri dish. Did you know the stickers that you put on the outside of these containers, these vials, can be just peeled off? Did I mention that they test the quality of this shit because people threaten to sabotage this stuff because one country's fighting another country? You don't think the Taliban would sabotage any of this, or some other group? So let's review. Jane Ruby, it doesn't have any qualifications in this area. Pablo Campra does, but he chose to use a light microscope originally for his first claim, and then decided he was totally right by comparing something with a picture on the internet of graphene oxide. Okay, so let's say you got your capsules filled with charcoal at home, and you swallow one. Going to kill you? How much would you have to eat constantly for this to show up in your lungs and tissues, because your body's just taking the graphene and putting it somewhere to get rid of it because it can't get rid of it easily? But they're injecting it in intramuscular injection or intradermal injections into fat layer isn't the same as putting it in your gut. They fed it to the mice to be toxic. That's how you do it. Putting it in the tissue made lumps. That's why they didn't do that experiment. Go read the goddamn thing. No, I'm not providing links to that. Fuck it. Nobody else is going to read it. The vials that are being referred to, and I'll say it now in the video, COVID-19 vaccine. do not contain graphenes. Graphene is not a magical thing like the word nano particle or quantum. These are not magic words for I'm going to shut my brain off and not look shit up. This took me 10 minutes to look it up. Why don't you spend 10 minutes looking it up to see if I'm completely wrong? And please stop using Facebook for medical information. And Pablo Campra needs to do a follow-up work himself to redeem himself. He needs to go out and ask his own people, here's the vial, get a sample from it, tell me what it is. Everybody should go through peer review. He's a professor. He teaches this. His students should tell him that. You need to do this. I don't know. You have to, or we won't follow you. A teacher who does not do what they teach isn't a good teacher. I'm sure he's a good teacher. And I'm sure if he actually told everybody, yeah, I checked it, I was wrong, they would ignore that and keep posting his other video, right? And Jane Ruby isn't anything important. A person with a psychology doctorate telling large numbers of people propaganda. I won't make a comparison to Goebbels. If anybody dresses up like a lab coat person and they're not supposed to wear that lab coat, it's an infomercial. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. Yeah, it's bullshit.